recording. All right, so we've done these ratios, okay? So what possible codons can we make from those? Okay, well, be specific. CAA, ACA. What? Yep, CCA, ACC, CCC, AAA, AAC. Did we get all of them? You guys did not do these in a really defined.
No, we did not. CAC?
CAC? Okay. Go ahead and put those down. So we've got 80% C's and 20% A's. I want you to go ahead and write them all out in order from the most probable to the least probable. Right. So which ones are you going to see most often and which ones are you going to see least often? And there'll be a lot of ties. Okay, which one's the most probable? Right, because C's are most common.
I know, but I thought like they would combine like a
Nope. CCC. We'll do the actual probabilities in a minute. What's next most probable?
The time between CCA.
Something with two C's, right? So CCA, CAC, ACC. Okay. What's next most probable? AAC. Does that make sense? Because A's are less common than C's. And then what's the least probable? Right, AAA. But we can actually calculate the percent we expect of these, or the probability of these, right? Okay. So what's the probability of CCA or CCC?
80 to the third. Like,
Yes, not 80 though. 0.8, right? So
there's like a 0.8 one time times 3.
So the 0.8 fraction chance or an 80% chance that the first one's a C, right? Because it's 80% C in solution. 0.8 that the next one's a C times 0.8 that the next one's a C. All right, so we can get our calculator. And that is, I'm going to put it into a percent. That's 51.2%. Okay. How about CCA? How would we do that? Yes, exactly. 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.2. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.2. I get 12.8%. How about the next one? Yeah, 12.8% because it's two C's again. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, next one, AAC. What's the probability of getting that? Yep, 0.2 times 0.2 times, what did we do? AAC, yes. So 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.8. And what was that? 6.4. That feels too high, but you think it's right?
Oh, sorry, no, wait, point. Sorry. 12.8.
No, that was the last one. 3.2 is what I got.
Yeah. Oh. I did point, I heard 0.1, I don't know what I did.
And what's the chance of getting AAA?
0.2. 0.8. Oh, wait.
Okay. Does everybody understand how we got those? Let me really quick add them all up and see if all's right with the world. Yes, all's right with the world. They add up to 100%. Okay? So, what they could do in terms of determining what the codons were is not only could you decide what's most common and least common, but if you're doing your experiment carefully, you can quantitate how much radioactivity is in each of those tubes, do it as a percentage, and you could determine what some of these were, what some of these were likely to be. So let's go ahead and look at that. So out of this, we learned that with our codon table, right, CCC, let's see, what does CCC give us? Proline, right? So we've got CCC, it's going to be 51.2% that, right? But we also have some other CC things. CCA is going to be 12%, right? Okay, and then do we have any other things for, those are just our only 4 for proline, right? Do you guys get that? So the percentage that the rate of the radioactivity that would be in the proline tube would be, what is that? 64%? If I add those two together? Okay. So we're taking this one and we're taking this one. And 64% proline. Percent radioactivity. That makes sense? And so what they know from that then is they know, well, okay, the only way I can get 64% is if CCC, and they probably already knew that, was one of mine for proline. And then I know that it's something else with 2 C's, right? So out of that, you get that proline is CCC, and proline is also CCA or CAC or ACC. You can't distinguish between them because all 3 of those were 12% each, right? All right, so what else can we get out of this? Well, we have this ACC, right? Where do we get ACC? ACC is right here for threonine. Okay, let's go ahead and just go down and label all the codons. I'm going to take some of these arrows out and let's go ahead and label them down. So this was proline, right? This is proline. CAC is histidine. Okay. Histidine. ACC is threonine. AAC is asparagine. ACA, threonine again. That makes sense. CAA, glutamine. And AAA is it lysine?
Yeah.
Those are brain cells I'm not getting back. All right. All right, so we can then look at the percentages of all of these. So threonine, what percentage of the radioactivity would be in threonine? 16, right? 2.8 plus 3.2. So 16% of radioactivity in threonine. So that means that threonine is going to be, it's going to have, that's 2, right? And 1 for C's. So we're going to have CC, it's CCA or it's CAC or it's ACC, and it's going to be CAA, ACA, and CAA, right? So we've got one of each of those. Does that make sense? Okay, and then we continue to cascade through these. So you can go through and figure out what other things are. You also know what lysine is from this, right? That was easy, because lysine is going to be 0.8% and it doesn't have anything else in there. So then the next step, so we've got some possibilities for some codons we've nailed down. But then what came along is, I don't know that I'm going to get this guy's name right, but Gobind Khorana came up with a way to find polynucleotides where you could alternate them. So you could do CA, right? So next, a method to produce alternating nucleotide RNAs was developed. So now for our thing, we can take those A's and C's and we can make A, C, A, C, A, C, A, C, A, okay, etc. Which codons do we have here? We have ACA and we have CAC, right? Okay, and they're present in 50% each, right? Because ACA, CAC, that's all you get. It's not percentages here. And so we do this experiment along with the other experiment, and CAC and then ACA, so let's go up to our actual codon table. CAC is histidine. So this is His. So we see His 50% in terms of radioactivity. And we see ACA, threonine. Threonine is 50% activity, right? So we know that we know from this experiment that threonine is either CAC or it's ACA. We don't know which, but we can go back to the previous experiment. Is ACA or CAC, when we look at this for threonine, ACA and CAC are both possibilities for threonine. So it doesn't help us out yet, right? We don't know which of these it is. But histidine, what were our choices for histidine? Well, actually, we already knew histidine, right? Well, no, we didn't know histidine. We know that histidine is going to be either CAC, it's one that has two C's, CCA or ACC, right? Do you see why? I see some puzzled looks. Histidine is 12 point, all we know from our experiment is that it's 12.8%. So that means it has to be one of these three. But now we did an experiment down here where we said, well, histidine is either CAC or ACA. Is ACA one of our choices here? No. So that tells us that histidine is this one, CAC, right? And now we know that threonine is not CAC, so it must be ACA. So we just got two more. Okay, and do you see that we could continue this process of alternating and running these experiments, and eventually you can nail them all down?
How long does this take?
I don't know. Probably some number of years, probably less than a decade. Probably a lot of people working, probably a lot of attention on it. You have to look it up. I'm going to guess 5 years. I'm going to guess that these guys came, that, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they came up with the first method. There were a couple things, and in quick succession, people kind of put it together. All right, so we'll see how long this takes. I've got a practice worksheet where you can do it. We have an alternate universe here. We've done these 2 experiments and figured out percentages of radioactivity. And what I want you to do is come up with 4 from this. We don't have enough data here to come up with more than 4, but I want you to figure out what 4 of the codons are from this set of experiments. If you're stuck,
Can we talk to everyone?
oh, no, you absolutely can work together, yes. But do make sure you understand it in case it shows up on something.
Okay, how do you feel like in the first place? All the different ways that you can put it.
Because, okay, sorry, yeah, because like if you look at, the 0.8 is gonna be the one that's, yeah. 51. Yes.